Welcome to A Fine Time, The Nanny Revisited. This is a podcast about The Nanny, where we recap each episode and then discuss, sharing our own unique take on each episode. I'm Bernadette.
And I'm Debbie. Today we're talking about episode 52, A Fine Family Feud. As usual, we'll start with a very brief summary of the episode. Maggie is turning 16, and Maxwell, relying on Cece's sorority connections, has planned a Sweet 16 at the Guggenheim. Unfortunately, Maggie is less than thrilled by his party planning finesse and recruits Fran to take over. Fran decides that a better venue for the party is her dad's sister's nightclub, Tanta Frida's in Queens. While hesitant at first, Maggie loves the idea of having a retro-themed party at Tanta Frida's. The only problem? Frida and Sylvia haven't spoken since 1979, and Sylvia is less than pleased with the idea. Fran manages to broker peace between her relatives long enough for the party to be held at Tanta Frida's, but tensions boil over when Sylvia fails to inform Frida that her bottom was exposed due to a wardrobe malfunction, and a food fight erupts. Maxwell, who has stepped outside to grab the camera, turns on the lights, bringing the melee to a halt. He's upset that Fran ruined Maggie's party, but quickly changes his tune when Maggie indicates that everyone was enjoying the food fight festivities. Maxwell and Fran make up, and she gives him a big, over-the-top hug, smearing him with the food covering her dress. And the episode ends. Bernadette, do you have anything you want to add?
I do not.
Awesome. Would you like to take us to scene 1 in the kitchen?
Yes, so we open up in the kitchen. Niles is there, Fran is there, Gracie's at the table, and Fran holds up like a pair of pantyhose, and one side is significantly shorter than the other, and she kind of is like, they call this slightly irregular.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's a little random in the scene, but that's
it
how the
is.
show starts.
Yeah, it's totally random.
So Maggie comes in and she asks Fran, does it show yet? And like Fran is like, show what? And then she like covers Gracie's ears,
Mm-hmm.
expecting something else, right? And Maggie
Correct.
clarifies that I'm 16 next week. And she's like, oh, yeah, you just reminded me of when I told my mom that I lost my Virgin airline tickets.
Yep.
They were non-refundable. Yeah. Well, because she said, I lost my Virgin airline tickets. Gracie asks, oh, did you ever get them back? She's like, no, it was non-refundable.
When
So
you
anyway,
lose that ticket, it's non-refundable.
yep.
And Gracie
And then,
doesn't ask.
nope. But then is it Niles who kind of chimes in unless you get engaged to Prince Charles?
Yes.
So anyway, again, we find out the major premise of this episode. Maggie's Sweet 16 is coming up. And Maggie and Fran are kind of excited. You know, Fran's like, with my panache and your dad's checkbook, you could get 2 chicks in Aruba. And Maggie tells Fran, dad's just been saying over and over again, because Fran asks, has she had a chance to talk to him about it? And she's like, no, he just keeps on saying how I'm almost grown up little girl, and he pinches my cheeks with this goofy grin. And just then Maxwell walks into the kitchen and does exactly that.
Right.
And then he also kind of, starts reminiscing, oh, it was just yesterday that I, was putting you on Mr. Potty. And Maggie kind of comments, oh, you're making me vomit.
Yes.
And then again, Maxwell's still kind of in that reminiscing stage, because he's like, oh, do you remember Mr. Snake? You used to love it as a kid. And he puts his arm up underneath his shirt so that one of his fingers comes up near his collar, and that's Mr. Snake.
That's a great way to describe that, by the way.
Oh, thanks. And then of course Fran comments, oh, my ex-boyfriend, that was my ex-boyfriend's favorite game as well. And Maxwell's not too happy with that comment as he's adjusting his shirt back into his belt.
Correct. Somehow it takes on a different meaning
yes.
with the reference to Danny.
Yep. So Maggie is telling them, oh, my friend Tiffany, her parents flew all her friends out to South Africa, and they even had Whitney Houston sing. And Brighton chimes in because he's come in at this time. Well, if Maggie gets a sweet 16, I'd like a bar mitzvah.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, immediately Max was like, Brighton, you're not Jewish. And Fran chimes in, well, if you make a sizable donation to the temple, maybe that will get you somewhere.
Right.
So anyway, we turn back to the topic though, Maggie Sweet 16, and Maxwell says, oh, in terms of what he's kind of thinking, world famous, exquisitely decorated, visited by royalty. And Fran is like, Leonard's of Great Neck.
Mm-hmm.
And she talks about how great the shrimp scampini is. And
But it's made with scrod.
Mm-hmm. Maxwell kind of looks at her like, what royalty would be there? And she's like, well, at my cousin Meryl's wedding, in the room next to it, they had a Prince Machiavelli convention. So who's dumb now, or who sounds stupid now, or something like that. Anyway.
Yeah.
So
that reference totally went over my head until I started.
I'm assuming it's Machiavelli, but
I don't think so.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because that was my first thought as well. And I was like, she's probably just mispronouncing it. But no, there actually is a reference there.
Oh, okay. We'll pick that up later. But then Maxwell reveals that he's actually thinking of the solarium at the Guggenheim Museum. Gloria Vanderbilt just had a party there, and they had Bobby Short sing. So he he kind of starts talking about, just imagine, coming down the grand foyer, long white gloves, a pink, was it silk dress? Satin dress. How does it's the, did I write that right? It's the Perlman sound?
Itzhak Perlman.
Okay. Itzhak. Okay. And Maggie, you can tell by her facial expression, is not loving this idea.
Mm-mm.
Maxwell's oblivious. He leaves, and Maggie turns to Fran. What are the odds of me dying in my sleep tonight? And Fran's like, not good enough.
Exactly.
And Maggie explains that it just sounds so boring and stuffy. Like, nobody's gonna, none of her friends are gonna like it. And Fran's like, oh, sweetie, don't worry, no one will come.
Right.
So in this opening scene, we're setting up the whole idea of like, okay, what are we going to do for Maggie Sweet 16? Do you have anything you'd like to add to that opening scene?
I do not.
Okay. Can you take us to the office?
I'd love to. So we're in the office, and Cece's just hanging up the phone, and she's in there with Maxwell and Niles, and she announces that the Sweet 16 is all set up at the Guggenheim. And she explains how she was able to, secure it, that the curator and I were in the same sorority. And Niles chimes in, Delta Delta guy. And she doesn't even take the bait. But Maxwell is clearly oblivious to Niles and his snarky comments. And he compliments Cece about how she's amazing. I don't know how you do it. And she gets this like giddy, smile, and she laughs. And it's frankly not a very attractive look on her.
It's a little but
it's not her.
So giddy. Yeah.
It's and also I stop me if you disagree, but I think it's notable what she's wearing in this scene. She's wearing this bright yellow, long sleeved, long jacketed suit, and she looks like a canary, or the cat that swallowed the canary, perhaps. Mm-hmm. And she just all smiles. And she says, "Oh, Maxwell, stop. I adore the children like they were my very own." And she picks up the picture of the kids and looks at it, especially, the big one, because mm-hmm. she can't remember any of the kids' names, which is the running joke here. Mm-hmm. And then I consider this still part of the same scene, even though it's like directly.
Yeah. Okay. I did too.
Okay. So we then kind of cut to the hallway right outside the office, and Fran and Maggie are standing together and they're talking. And Fran basically is telling her, remember, honey, we got to stick together. He can't say no to the both of us. Are you ready? Maggie's like, okay. Fran opens the door. Mr. Sheffield, she marches in. We have something we want to tell you. Maggie, meanwhile, split. Like we saw her split as Fran walked into the office. And Maxwell looks up, we who? And Fran realizes that she taught Maggie too well. And so she instead of like going very confidently and just cutting to the chase and saying, Maggie hates the party, I'm taking over, she sort of starts beating around the bush, and they start talking about the curtains in her room and the wallpaper. Finally, she gets to the point of saying, Maggie hates the Guggenheim. You're going to have to cancel. And again, Maxwell talks about, imagine Margaret going down the grand foyer, the long white gloves, the satin gown. And Fran, recognizes the picture in his head and says, well, Kathy adores a minuet at Ballet's Ruse and Crepe Suzette. I can't do it as well as she did. Our Patty I'm going to try this again. Well, Kathy adores a minuet at Ballet Russe and Crepe Suzette. Our Patty likes to rock and roll, which is a reference we'll talk about later. And so Maxwell catches the drift and is like, so you're saying I have to come up with another idea? And she's like, oh, you're so close. Actually, I have to come up with another idea. She wants me to take over from here. And Cece chimes in, Maxwell, I bent over backwards to get the museum. Niles was walking out, and as he walks out, he says, well, wouldn't be the first time. And Cece slams the door behind him. Mm-hmm. And so they talk a bit, and Maxwell finally is like, all right, let's cut to the chase. Where have you already decided to have my daughter's party? Tanta Frida's, says Fran, as if everyone knows what Tanta Frida's is. And clearly no one else does. What's Tanta Frido? Not Frito, Frida. And then Fran explains, my father's sister owns a nightclub in Queens. And Max was like, well, that sounds dreadful. And Fran doesn't see it the same way he does. And she explains, its history. It used to be a restaurant. Whose bright idea was it to open a Tony Roma's in a Hasidic neighborhood? I'll never know. Mm-hmm. And so it seems like it's been decided they're gonna move forward with going to Tanta Frida's.
Yes.
You want to add anything to scene 2?
No, I do not.
All right. Would you like to take us to, as Maxwell put it, Tanta Frito, Tanta Fajitas, but it's really Tanta Frida's.
Yes. So we are in Tanta Frida's, and it's Fran and Maggie who walk in first.
Right.
And Fran's kind of reminiscing, oh, this brings back memories. Me sitting at the bar with short skirt, big teased hair, and way too much makeup. Oh, well, times change. It's like, no, not really.
Right.
And we can kind of tell from Maggie's expression from the get-go that she's kind of not so into it. Mm-hmm. And
do you want to describe the scene?
So, I mean, if you're looking at it, there's like a bar to the left of the screen. And there's some tables in the middle and stuff, but it's, I mean, right now the lights are all up, like the overhead lights. Do you want to like jump in here?
So it looks a little dated, right?
Yeah.
Like even for the 90s, it looks a little dated. The chair, everything's like that. All the chairs are up on the tables. It's kind of like an empty room. There's a bit of like, I don't want to call it shimmery paper, but like they have like hanging from the ceilings at the very, very back. They have like silver.
Yeah, it's not a fancy venue by any stretch.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's really I think what I'm getting at. That it's clearly not what Maggie imagined, and exactly. It's not the picture that Maggie thinks Fran had painted for her.
Yeah, and Fran meanwhile is bummed that she didn't get to have, her. Was it graduation or Sweet 16?
So this time she says Sweet 16. Later she references
graduation. Okay,
exactly.
And she didn't get to have it here. And at first Maggie's like, why? Why? As in, why would she want to have the party there? But she kind of plays it off as, oh, why didn't you get to have it here? And this is when we learn that Sylvia and Aunt Frida haven't talked since 1979. And, since then they've both gained 40 pounds and they can't rub it in each other's faces.
Right.
And again, like I said, it's just them as we start the scene. And then she's, Aunt Frida, no response. And then she's like, watch this. Health inspector. And Frida is like, just one moment. And then in walks Aunt Frida to a big applause. And it's because we have a special guest star this time. I don't know if we want to save it for notable New Yorkers or not.
If you
But
want, you can share her name now and we can talk about who she is later, or we can just
okay,
wait.
we can just wait.
Okay.
Just so we know, the audience recognizes Aunt Frida. Okay. And she walks in and she and Fran kind of do the side kiss, mwah, mwah, mwah kind of thing.
Exactly.
And then, Fran introduces Maggie. Aunt Frida notes that Maggie's too thin. And then Aunt Frida asks, how's your father? Good. And then Fran interjects herself, and Ma's good too. And uh and again, she's not interested. I didn't write down what her response was.
Oh, she's still alive.
That's it. And so Fran's telling Maggie, oh, Aunt Frida, she's a bit of a celebrity around here. She sang on Merv Griffin's show. And Aunt Frida's like, oh, don't embarrass me. And then she adds twice.
Exactly.
Yeah. So a kind of false humility there. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
Fran continues to explain that Aunt Frida has buried 4 husbands. And Aunt Frida adds, well, they're all in one plot. So on holy days, I'm in and out.
Correct.
So Maggie, again, is still not too pleased with the place. And so Maggie kind of says to Fran, maybe let's not rule out the Guggenheim.
Right.
And Fran, though, is like kind of brushes it off, goes behind the counter, and as she's going behind the counter saying, oh, I worked here one summer when I was 15. And Aunt Fran's like, shh, I'll lose my license. And Fran is dismissive of that comment, like, please, if you haven't lost your license over the water bugs, that are the size of, did she say horses or like ponies?
No, bouncers.
Oh, sorry, bouncers. Then, you don't have anything to worry about. And then that's when the light there's basically Fran hits the switch and the lights go down, disco music starts playing, there's lights. And this is when Maggie starts getting into it. Oh, I see. Like, my party can be retro.
Right.
And, Fran's like, yeah. And she's like, we can dress up like the olden days. And she turns to Fran, like, did you save your old stuff? And Fran's like a bit insulted by this comment. And she's like, no, I was on the Pinta, but all my stuff got lost when I moved to the Santa Maria.
When I transferred from the Pinta to the Santa Maria, they lost my luggage.
Yes. So then Aunt Frida, hands them over the menu so they can start planning the food. There's this whole thing about, oh, the Tony Marinara is gone. Yeah, now it's the Ed Marinero Marinara. That's a tongue twister.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. And then there's obviously some type of water bug or something appears because there's quickly and damn butterflies.
Exactly.
And then Maggie, though, is like, okay, is this going to be okay? Like, if your mother and your aunt don't get along. And of course, Fran's like, oh, it'll be fine. Cut to the next scene. But before we do you have anything you'd like to add to this scene?
I just want to add to that last point before jumping to the next scene. Maggie asks, won't she be upset you're planning a party here? And Fran's like, oh, honey, your sweet 16 has nothing to do with my mother. What could she possibly be upset about? Mm-hmm. Which sets us up for the beginning of scene 4, where we cut to, we're in the kitchen at Sylvia and Morty's apartment, and Sylvia is trying to climb out the kitchen window. And she's saying, let me go, I want to die. And Fran and Maggie are trying to pull her back and stop her from, jumping out the window. And Fran, says, Ma, Ma, quit it. And Sylvia's like, no, you are not my daughter. And Fran's like, well, then who gave me these thighs so I can shoot them? Mm-hmm. And, they do get her off the the windowsill, off the window ledge and into a chair. How could you do this to me? Ma, you have nothing to do with this. And Sylvia's flabbergasted. I have nothing to do with my daughter's boss's daughter's sweet 16. Fran, if you have the party at Frida's, I am not going. To which Fran says, good, Ma, because you are not invited. And Sylvia's shocked that she's not invited. Not invited. She gets up and she goes to the door out of the kitchen and shouts to Morty, who's, as usual, invisible, unseen. You hear this, Morty? I'm not invited. Your sister got me blackballed like she did at Hadassah. And Fran's trying to, continue trying to de-escalate the situation, but not doing so well. Ma, Frida didn't get you blackballed. They threw you out of Hadassah because you donated cakes with half the frosting licked off. I felt lightheaded in the car. She has turned you against me. I don't want to know from that woman. Is she bigger than me? And Sylvia's gone and gotten a snack from the fridge. Fran closes the fridge door for her and is like, this isn't about you and Frida. This is all about Maggie. And then Maggie tries to, open her mouth and say something. Not now, honey. Mm-hmm. And Fran explains how traumatic this fight has been for her. This stupid fight has already ruined my graduation because I couldn't have it at Frida's. And Sylvia's like, it was still lovely. We had it al dente. And Fran interjects, that means outdoors. Mm-hmm. And Sylvia, Maggie's like, well, that sounds kind of nice. Oh yeah, we had it off the roof of Grandma Guetta's old building, middle of June, 114 degrees. And Sylvia's like, well, people stayed all night. And Fran's like, yeah, that's because they were stuck to the tar. And Maggie tries to, make things better and says, look, I want to have my party at Frida's, but not if it comes between you and your mother. And she walks out, and the two of them are left thinking about Maggie, and Sylvia ultimately says, never mind me, have the party wherever you want. And Fran looks at her, oh Ma, you're just saying that to make me feel guilty. And Sylvia's like, I'm not trying to make you feel anything, feel this. And she moves her chest towards Fran. Is this a lump here? I think we've either previously seen or we will see at some point Fran commenting that her mother could grow a tumor on command. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of what she's indicating here. Mm-hmm. Do you want to add anything to scene 4?
Nope, you got it.
All right. Would you like to take us back to the Sheffield foyer?
Yes. So Niles is arranging some flowers at the little circular table in the foyer, and in walks Cece through the front door, and she has apparently been spending hours trying to find the little jewelry shop in Greenwich, Connecticut. She was not successful. And of course, Niles is like, oh, you thought Greenwich, Connecticut. it was Greenwich Village. Cece's like, that's 10 minutes away. And he's like, yeah, you better hurry before they close. And Cece, as she's walking out, is mumbling, what? You'd think that they'd be able to deliver. Mm-hmm. And so as soon as the door shuts, Niles is, oh, my, they do. And he pulls out of his pocket a little wrapped present. Oh, dear. I wonder if I can catch her. Slowly makes it to the door, opens it, then very softly says, oh, Miss Babcock. Miss Babcock? And then, of course, he's like, there's nothing he can do.
Darn.
Mm-hmm. So Fran is telling Niles, is coming in, tells Niles that she's going to be backing out of the party, and he's like, oh, can they not fit the 10-foot hero through the door? Mm-hmm. And Fran kind of like, if you're not part of the solution, you're my mother. to Niles, his comments are not helping. And basically, she's going to tell Mr. Sheffield. But as soon as he walks in, she quickly grabs the phone. Burnt down? Oh, Aunt Frida, how terrible. Where can we have the party? But as she's holding up the phone rings. And she quickly tries to cover this by saying, oh, that damn call waiting. It's so noisy. Mm-hmm. And Niles walks away for a second with the phone. But of course, Mr. Sheffield is not buying this. He asks, okay, I need the truth in 5 seconds. And And so Fran, like, in like one breath, practically is saying, like, Maggie wants her party at my Aunt Frida's, but my Aunt Frida and my won't let my mother be there. And my mother says, she'll disown me if I go. Oh, you're growing your hair long, very sexy. Like all of this, like all in one. And
Yeah, she says it super, super fast. And then
yes,
she like also like plays with Maxwell's hair.
and he's not having it. And
No.
remain calm. And and so anyway, she explains, okay, if you remain calm, I'll answer any question you have. And Niles butts in at this point, saying, how did your mother get mixed up in his daughter's sweet 16? And Fran pointedly turns to Niles and says, I said I would answer all of his questions, indicating to Maxwell.
Correct.
And so again, she kind of explains and like, why don't we just have it at the Guggenheim? And the Guggenheim, I just canceled it. Well, why did you do that? And then he starts kind of feeling around in his pockets, and she's like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm looking for the murder confession I wrote the night I hired you.
Correct.
And basically where we end up is like, Maxwell informs Fran she's gonna have to figure out, like, if Maggie wants it at Tanta Fajitas,
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna happen. Do you have anything to add to that scene?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. Do you want to take us
So
later in the day?
yeah, we're still in the Sheffield home. Um, you know, Frida has come to the Sheffield home, and the doorbell ring. Brighton is getting ready to leave to go, I think, rollerblading. And Frida comes and she comments to Niles, wow, get a load of this joint. If I had known it was so fancy, I would have slipped on the stairs outside. And Fran like rushes over, you're late. I wanted to talk to you before she gets here. Who? And then camera pivots and there's Sylvia. Hi. And Sylvia and Frida see each other and in perfect unison say, what is she doing here? She invited me. You're not welcome here. All right, fine. I'm leaving. And they both start like walking towards the door. And here's where they have one of those like comedic, like let's slow time down, like a slow motion chase. And Fran shouts to Brighton to, block the door. And the two and Frida and Sylvia are walking. And to me, it's almost like they're dinosaurs, the way they're moving and how like slow it is. And, Brighton realizes he can't hold him back. So he like closes the door and makes a run for it. And Niles comes at the perfect time carrying a platter with cake. Fran grabs the cake and shouts, cake! And the two of them, Sylvia and Frida, turn around and they see Fran holding up the cake to them. And Fran says, see the nice frosting? Pointing at the cake. And it's chocolate, not yellow on the inside. And so she starts walking them back towards the couch, luring them with the cake. Come on, Frida. Come on, Ma. Come to the couch. Sit down. Sit down. Good girls. And they both reach towards the cake. No treats until I tell you. First, we're going to talk. And Sylvia says, okay, you want to talk? Fine. I'll be the bigger person. There's a beat. She turns to Frida and says, drop dead. Which is not exactly what I think anyone was expecting her to say, to be the bigger person, but oh well. Frida picks that up and says, cook for me and I will. And then she tells Fran that her father was the first bulimic in Flushing. And they continue to bicker, and Fran, cuts a piece of cake and puts whipped cream on it and, starts wafting the fumes towards them, or the smell of the baked good towards them. And Fran basically says, look, now I want to find out about how this whole feud got started. And the way Frida and Sylvia respond to her, it's obvious that they don't even know how their feud got started.
Lots of things.
Exactly. Right. Well, it was lots of things, plenty of stuff. And Fran's like, I don't believe you two Yentas. You don't even remember. What happened? You were both so close. And she turns to Frida. Do you remember at that wedding when your Dino Wiglet caught on fire from Uncle Zev's scar? Who was the one who poured the celery dish on your head? And Sylvia's like, it was an emergency. Anyone would have done the same. And she turns to Fran turns back to Sylvia. And do you remember little Irvy's bar mitzvah when there was only one cut of prime rib left? one end cut, I should say, end cut of prime rib left. Who took the middle? And Frida then answered her part. I know how much she loves it, and it didn't mean so much to me. And the two of them realize that they've been fighting over nothing. Oh, Frida, they hug each other. And Sylvia says, oh, Frida, she's right. Have the party with my blessing. And Frida says, and you'll come and you'll dance. And they hug, and it's good. And Fran says, now you see, this is the way it should be. Hugging, not trying to screw each other out of Grandma Fine's pearls. And, well, unfortunately, that reignites a bit of the tension. Frida gets up. She took my mother's pearls? And Sylvia's like, I have to sleep with her son. And then Fran opens the chocolate sauce and lures them back down and calms everyone back down. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, just that, like, whenever they're kind of bickering, they start kind of doing like the slap hitting to each other.
They do.
Like on the arms and stuff. So like very childish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So then we see an exterior thing with like a shot with a limo.
Mm-hmm.
And we go inside, and it's the party at Tanta Frida's. Maxwell is at the punch bowl, which is kind of in the middle of our screen. He doesn't seem too pleased with the whole situation. Fran dances up, and she has again, just briefly mentioned, she has like a form-fitting short blue dress on.
Describe the material.
It's kind of shiny.
Right. It looks sort of like plasticky.
Yeah.
Which will be important later, but continue.
So, Maxwell kind of just makes some comments of like, oh, are you going to auction off a Ford Granada? Is that what he says? Auction off?
Raffle off.
Raffle off. And then, like Fran's just talking about how, it's a great place and stuff. And then Max was like, what's on the bar? And she smacks it. Milk dud. Yeah.
Ow.
And then kind of like says, oh, I hope she took the vending machines out of the bathroom. What kind of vending machines? And then, of course, at that point, Gracie walks up and asks for some money for the vending machines because you can buy balloons in the bathroom.
Correct. Those are not actually balloons.
Nope, not balloons.
Which, as a child, you would not know.
Mm-hmm. And then we kind of see Sylvia and Aunt Frida walk in arm in arm. Oh, who does your hair? Aunt Frida asks Sylvia. I just can't get the same height. And then Sylvia says to Aunt Frida, oh, I wish I had your voice. When I close my eyes, all I hear is Julie Budd. And then, though, we see as they're walking by that actually Frida, her dress is kind of stuck, exposing her butt. She has like undergarments, but still. And so Fran quickly helps her put it down, and she kind of chides her mother like, didn't you see that? Like, why didn't you help her out? And that sparks a memory for Aunt Frida. Now I remember at Erwin and Cookie's 25th anniversary, I was dancing out on the dance floor doing the alley cat, and I also had my butt exposed or something like that, and
with my tush hanging out for the whole world to see, and she didn't say one word.
Yes. And then Sylvia tries to defend herself that I'm oblivious sometimes. And then Sylvia kind of gets into it and says, well, you have 2 watermelons for sale, on the front end.
You are so focused on your rear. Meanwhile, you've got 2 watermelons for sale up front.
You're just jealous that I worked on Broadway. Oh, yes. Can't forget your famous line, goobers or Raisinets? So Frida ends up picking up, it looks like an eclair.
That's what I thought it was
cannoli eclair. And she walks up to Sylvia and just smushes it into her like chest. And so, of course, Sylvia reciprocates, and Fran's trying to stop them. Like, what are you? You're doing a food fight? And Brighton yells, "Food fight!" And everything goes crazy. Everybody starts throwing things. And I don't know if you noticed this too, but like Sylvia and Frida Rotary kind of laughing as this is happening.
They were definitely smiling.
Yeah. So Maxwell then walks into the room, oblivious at first, but then he gets hit by some food in the head, side of the head.
Correct.
He goes behind the counter, and then turns on the overhead lights and cuts the music. Miss
Right.
Fine. Oh, Miss Fine.
Yup.
And then we see Fran turn around and she is covered from head to toe in what looks like
Correct.
whipping cream or like other types of, stuff. And she kind of approaches, I see you found the camera. What
Mhm.
happened? And uh, and again, you're looking around, it's like totally messy. Everybody's covered, and Sylvia's kind of sitting behind, and she makes the comment, lovely party, while she's putting
Uh-huh.
on some lipstick. And
She wasn't putting on lipstick. No, she was wiping some of the food off and eating it.
oh, okay. Um, and then he's like, I was gone for 2 seconds, and then I come in and Bedlam has erupted. And at that point, Cece walks by, covered head to toe, and she just
Uh-huh.
says, Maxwell. And then 2 seconds later, Niles comes similarly, just covered head to toe, and he just says, she started it, sir.
Yup.
Um, and then kind of he Maxwell's upset. He wanted this to be the perfect party, and Fran's like, I'm no, I'm sorry, bad nanny, bad nanny.
Right. She like
And then
slaps her own hand.
yeah, and then but Maggie and he's like, you shouldn't apologize to me. You should apologize to Margaret. And of course, at this moment, Maggie walks up. She's like, oh, we're all having such a great time. Who's the idiot who turned on all the lights? And then so like Max was like, oh,
And Fran's like, I don't know, Mr. Sheffield. Do
yeah,
you know Mr. Sheffield?
no, I went to get the camera.
Right.
And then Maggie tells Fran, oh, my friends say this is the best party. Thank you so much for putting it together. And then she turns to Maxwell and says, thanks for paying for it. Um, and and again, after she leaves, Fran gets kind of a look in her face and she picks something up and Maxwell's like trying to calm her down, like, Miss Fine, remember who signs your checks? And she's like,
Mhm.
oh, this? I'm not gonna throw it on you. And she does like pretends to, but then doesn't. And she goes, fake out.
Yep.
She puts it down on the table and then she says, friends. And she puts out her hand and, to shake. And he accepts it. But then she pulls him to her. Come here. And then so they're in an embrace and she's like wiggling up and down, trying to get all of the stuff off on her onto him. And he's just looking miserable.
Yep.
And that is the episode. Is there anything you want to add to that last scene?
I just want to ask, could you imagine having to clean up after that party?
That would be terrible.
Like I was thinking about it while rewatching it. Like it's one thing for like the actors and actresses who like know it's coming because they've read the script and like that would still be so obnoxious to try to get like cake and food and custard and whatnot out of your hair and off your clothing. But like imagine if it was like not TV and like reality and like some poor person, janitor or someone had to go and clean up the huge mess.
Yeah, well, also just thinking of like clothing too. Like if you're not like if you're wearing a nice outfit to a party and then
Yeah,
suddenly you have food dumped all over you, that would not be pleasant. I agree.
exactly. Like, I mean, at some point, you're probably better off just cutting your losses and throwing it out. But yeah, like, anyway, that was just something that struck me about how messy it was
Mm-hmm.
and how horrible it would have to be to clean it up.
Yeah. And I can't emphasize enough how like especially Cece and Niles are just covered. Like their faces especially, it's like you can barely see their face.
Right. And like, so Cece has her hair up, like she actually has like it up in an updo. And like from her head, like all the way down, she's like covered in what looks like pudding
Mm-hmm.
or custard.
Yeah.
And so is Niles. And also,
Mm-hmm.
frankly, so is Fran, which also makes me wonder where all of the custard came from.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So like when when Frida and Sylvia were like smashing food onto each other's chests, like that made sense. Like an eclair, it's a bit of pastry and then cream, so that made sense. But like everyone else got covered in cream, and there seemed like way too much of it.
Yeah.
And again, could you imagine trying to shampoo that out of your hair?
Ugh.
And how unpleasant that would be?
Yeah.
That's just what I'm stuck with the scene.
Yeah, I've never found the appeal of a food fight, even as a child. I never aspired to be a part of a food fight.
I was gonna say, I don't think I've ever been a part of a food fight. Have you?
I don't believe so.
Do people actually do that? Or is that something that just happens on TV?
I don't know. Dear listeners, let us know if you've ever been a part of a food fight.
Exactly. We're very curious to hear about your experiences in the food fight and cleaning up thereafter. Because it just, like, even just like cleaning up from the scene, it just looked like it would be such a nightmare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My question to you is, which of the two options would you have wanted for your Sweet 16? The Guggenheim or Tanta Frida's?
I didn't have a Sweet 16.
I didn't either.
So
I'm saying theoretically of the two, hypothetically.
Oh, that's considering how the one at Tanta Frida's went, I think I'm going to go with the Guggenheim. So I feel like people are less likely to throw food.
Mm-hmm.
How about you?
Again, I wouldn't want a food fight at my Sweet 16 or any of my parties. But I also Maggie has a point. You don't want a super stuffy party either, especially as a kid.
True.
So I don't know. I think if there was no food fight, then Tanta Frida's. If
Fair.
I'm older, if I'm not 16, then the Guggenheim.
Fair. Frankly, I'm not sure either particularly appeals to me.
Yeah,
at this point.
not really.
But also,
if you had to choose.
Fair. If I had to choose, put a gun to my head and made me choose, mm-hmm. I think I go with Guggenheim.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Although, yeah, I'm gonna stick with the Guggenheim.
Okay.
So, is there anything else you want to talk about holistically, or shall we jump into favorite fashion?
Let's jump into the shticks, and I might bring up some stuff later.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That's fine. You always reserve the right to bring things up later.
Yep.
So that actually kind of on the point of like the location of the party. I didn't find Maggie's dress or anyone's dress to be particularly retro.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it didn't really fit. If they were trying to go for like a disco theme, I don't think they actually did that.
Okay, good, because that was the first observation I made about that. Since this is an episode about Maggie, I think we should talk a little bit about Maggie's fashion for a change, starting with her Sweet 16 dress, which, as we've already established, was not retro. Mm-hmm. For those who have not watched the episode recently, it's pink, it's short, it's like a straight dress, but it seems to have like lace or beading as like an overlay. And I think it has one sleeve, so it has like it has one shoulder bare, one shoulder with a sleeve, and then I think the back is mostly open. Mm-hmm. Did you like it? Dislike it? Have no opinion?
I don't think I particularly liked it. What about you?
I mean, of her outfits that are usually unremarkable, this one I thought was at least remarkable. Mm-hmm. I think I probably would have liked it better if it had two straps instead of one. Mm-hmm. But it did look like something a teenager would wear to a party.
Yeah, that's fair. I like going back, and I'm going to probably lean on you to describe it better.
Sure.
But earlier, and I think it's probably the outfit where when they first went to visit Aunt Frida's place, it kind of had kind of an Asian inspiration, I want to say.
Yes. So,
and I feel like that's very 90s.
So I actually also had that as a dress I wanted to talk about as well. So as you described, it's short sleeved. It's like a blue satiny dress. I mentioned the short sleeves. It's also short. She's wearing it with white tights. And it has like a pattern that I feel like you would see on this type of dress. Um, I feel like everyone I knew at some point in the like 90s or early 2000s had a dress or an outfit like that.
Mm-hmm. I personally did not, but I
Oh,
do recall seeing it. Yeah.
okay. I mean, I know I had one. My best friend had one. Um, but yeah, they sort of they do seem a little dated now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is there other fashion you want to talk about? I have a whole list of fashion to talk about.
Oh, well, again, so what were your thoughts on the outfit Fran wore to Maggie's Sweet 16?
I didn't like it. I
Really?
mean, the color was fine, but the plastic, like, the as we will see in the episode, the two Mrs. Sheffields, the Maxwell's mother describes one of Fran's outfit as um, the petroleum product you're wearing,
Ah. Mm-hmm.
and that description matches this dress that Fran wears.
Yeah.
It just,
So it kind of is Barbie-esque in a sense.
yeah, it is. I mean, the way it's cut, it's a very flattering cut.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the color. I don't like the material.
Yeah, I would agree.
Like, had it been a normal
Otherwise, it's
material,
very flattering on her.
oh, absolutely. But also, like, considering how the scene goes, the fact that it is plastic makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
But none of the other characters are
That's
wearing
what she
plastic.
knew.
Exactly. She knew this was a possibility. This is what happens at Tanta Frida's. Food fights just happen to break out.
Mm-hmm. So what other fashion were you wanting to discuss?
Okay, so I also wanted to talk about let's see. I really liked what Fran was wearing in the first scene. She's wearing, a black, I think, turtleneck, and then a pink and black skirt over black tights. I like that a lot. I also wanted to talk about some of what Frida and Sylvia were wearing,
Ah, yes.
because I feel like this is our first time meeting Aunt Frida. Although,
Mm-hmm.
as you may recall, back in the episode "The Wine Cellar," there's a reference to Frida, eating things with, two toothpicks, like a heavily made up praying mantis. And I think there's also anyway, that was a different character, a different actress playing Frida. Now we have the real Aunt Frida, if you will. Um, anyway, I digress. But anyway, so I feel like we should comment on her attire. I rather liked, but again, it felt dated what she was wearing when we meet her. It's I think she's wearing black bottoms and then a long sleeve black blouse with a lot of sequins.
Mm-hmm.
Like for the time, I like that. Reminded me a little bit of, I think, the rainbow fish
Mm-hmm.
from our childhood.
Yep.
For those who do not know what we're talking about, Google. Anyway, and then in the scene in the Sheffield home where Fran tries to broker peace between her aunt and her mother, we see a bit of a family resemblance still, in that Frida's wearing a gold, I think, dress, and then over it she has the leopard print shawl or jacket. It's not really a jacket, but like it's a throw, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so she wraps it around herself. And Sylvia's wearing a suit that is very, very brightly colored. I think it has red flowers on it and a yellow lapels, and it's very loud.
Mm-hmm.
And then actually at the party, I also want to comment on what they were wearing to the actual party. Frida's wearing a gold sequined shimmery dress, and as Sylvia has pointed out, her chest is somewhat exposed. But Sylvia has the same thing going on in her peach colored suit. Did you notice that Sylvia's suit, it sort of has, like, maybe suit is the wrong way to describe it, but like the blouse sort of is ribbed as if it was a corset, and then it had like a little bit of frill underneath, like coming out from the bottom, both around the waist or at the bottom of it.
Now that you say it, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I noticed that, and I was just like, oh, that's a really interesting outfit. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's all I wanted to say about the fashion. There was a lot there.
Yes. So shall we move on to notable New Yorkers?
Absolutely. Do you want to tell our wonderful listeners who played Aunt Frida?
Sure. Now, I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce the last name. Lainey Kazan?
I
Kazan.
correct. I will defer to you on the pronunciation of her name. I would just
don't know.
point to her and be like, it's
her,
Aunt Frida.
Yeah, I know her best though from My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
That is what she's very famous for, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And
She's
actually,
the mom, right?
I believe I've never actually seen it, but I believe so.
Yes. So that's
According,
how I recognized her. And obviously, I'm sure you best know her from this.
correct. This is what I know her from. She's Aunt Frida.
Mm-hmm.
According to IMDb, she actually she was Barbara Streisand's understudy in Funny Girl on Broadway.
Oh, wow.
So,
I didn't know that.
and since then, she has also appeared on shows like Will and Grace, Grey's Anatomy. She's been on a lot. So she's very famous.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I know her. I know her best as Aunt Frida. So,
mm-hmm. Yeah. So in the first scene, there's reference to Virgin Airlines.
mm-hmm.
Engaged to Prince Charles. That whole thing. Did you look into that or no?
I did not, but it's obviously a reference to Princess Diana.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's see here. I think Mr. Potty an actual thing?
That I didn't look into, but I probably should have. Let's see. When you Google Mr. Potty, you do get results.
Okay.
For things like, but not exactly what I would have. Oh yeah, so like yeah, it does look like it is a product,
mm-hmm.
or at least there's a book titled "Welcome, Mr. Potty."
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
now you mentioned that the reference to Prince Machiavelli or something like that was an actual reference. So please enlighten me.
Yeah, so Prince Machiavelli, Machiavelli, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. It is a line of perfumes that was originally designed by Prince George's V. Machiavelli, who was born in Georgia. He immigrated to the United States from Georgia after the Russian Revolution.
Mm-hmm. So the country, Georgia.
Yes, sorry. Yes, yeah. The country in Europe, Georgia, not the state, Georgia.
Mm-hmm. I skipped over, there's a Whitney Houston.
Whitney Houston was an influential American actress and singer. She's the only singer to have 7 consecutive #1 singles on Billboard's Hot 100 list. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
The Guggenheim,
so this is directly from the Guggenheim's webpage. The Solomon R. Guggenheim Foundation collects, preserves, and interprets modern and contemporary art and explores ideas across cultures through dynamic, curatorial, and educational initiatives and collaborations. It's a museum in New York City.
Yep. Gloria Vanderbilt.
So Gloria Vanderbilt was an American actress, artist, author, fashion designer, heiress, and socialite. She was the child at the center of what was called the Trial of the Century, which was a high-profile custody dispute, which ultimately was about control over her trust fund as a Vanderbilt. As an adult, she became a fashion designer with a line of blue jeans, for which she's most famous, perfume, and home goods.
She's also Anderson Cooper's mom, right?
I do not know.
I believe she is. Just off.
Yes, Gloria Vanderbilt.
Yes.
You're correct.
Bobby Short.
Okay. So where's my note? Bobby Short was an American cabaret singer and pianist who was known for interpreting songs of popular composers. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Now, you said it's Itzhak Perlman?
Yeah, I think it's actually pronounced Yitzhak Perlman. So according to his webpage, which is yitzhakperlman.com, obviously, he is, and I quote, the reigning virtuoso of the violin. He has the superstar status that is rarely afforded to a classical musician, and he has performed at such events such as Obama's first inauguration and the 2007 state dinner for the Queen, hosted by President Bush.
So Tony Roma's, is that a real?
Yes. And I believe it's actually one we've talked about, albeit briefly previously. According to TonyRomas.com, Tony Roma's is a full-service casual dining family restaurant where you can find premier barbecue ribs and steaks in locations across the world. End quote.
Merv Griffin, I feel like, has come up before.
So this is actually a reference to the Merv Griffin show, not
Mm-hmm.
Merv Griffin himself. It was an American talk show that was intended to be a companion to the Mike Douglas show. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia. And yes, it was hosted by Merv Griffin, in case that part was not clear.
I would, like, hope so.
Yeah, exactly. Could you imagine, I want to watch the Merv Griffin show and it's hosted by, someone else?
Yeah. So Fran references the Pinta and the Santa Maria, and she totally left out the Nina.
She did.
But those are the three, well, those are two of the three ships that came over.
Correct. So
Columbus, right?
that was it. I was just thinking that. Yes.
Okay. Just like double checking.
Yeah, no, I was like, yes, this is clearly Christopher Columbus. And then I was like, oh wait, what if I'm wrong? So
let's double check that. Now, okay, the menu items, were those just funny tongue twisters or
nope.
Actual?
Those are references.
Okay. Do you want to enlighten us a bit?
Sure. Tony Manero was an American golf. Well, so actually this one, I was unclear which the reference was. So according to Wikipedia, the reference could be to an American golfer or the John Travolta character from Staying Alive and Saturday Night Fever.
Oh, I think the latter would make more sense for a disco nightclub.
I would think so as well. But then there's the reference to, I guess that makes sense. Then there's Ed Marinaro. He was an American actor and former football player.
Mm-hmm.
The Ford Group.
Athletic, could be athletic references or acting references.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
There was a reference to a Ford Granada, which the Ford Granada was a series of sedans manufactured between 1975 and 1982 that were meant to replace the Ford Maverick. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia. Julie Budd, that's a reference, according to our friends at Wikipedia, to an American cabaret actress and singer who was known for her performances in the 1970s in Vegas. So I think we skipped a couple. I'm going to go back to the first scene, the reference to Leonard's of Great Neck. That is actually a reference. According to their webpage, which is leonardspalazzo.com, they're now referred to as Leonard's Palazzo. And I quote, the venue pairs classic and elegant ambiance with modern intrigue. And apparently they've caught the attention of a number of TV studios, including HBO and others. So yeah, it's a real place. It's in Great Neck. That's on Long Island. All right, who else did we miss? So in the office scene, Fran, that tongue twister that I had trouble getting out before, which I'll try to do better this time. While Kathy adores a minuet at Ballet Russe and Crepe Suzette, our Patty likes to rock and roll. Those are lyrics to the Patty Duke Show theme lyrics. Oh, I put the lyrics twice, but yeah. So the Patty Duke Show was an American sitcom from the 1960s about a rambunctious teenager living in Brooklyn Heights, New York. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia. And then I think I'm out.
I think I'm out as well.
Awesome. Glad we're on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
Shall we?
Several references. And
there are. I'll start with the ones we've talked about before. Bar mitzvah. That means son of commandment. That marks the time at which a boy becomes a man under Jewish law and is then responsible for his own mitzvot and following the commandments. So we talked about that one previously. We've talked about yenta, so basically a busybody. And then some of the new ones, when Brighton says, if Maggie gets a sweet 16, I want a bar mitzvah. And he's told, you're not Jewish. And Fran's like, oh, well, a sizable donation to Temple Manuel could take care of that. The conversion process is traditionally not just, I'm going to write you a big check. That's not how it works. There actually is a more formal process for conversion. It involves someone going to a rabbi and saying, I would like to convert to Judaism, and the person will be turned away 3 times they need to really, really want it. And, they'll be tried, the rabbi will try to dissuade them. Why would you want to join a people who's been constantly, attacked and hated throughout history? Like, get out of here, go away. But after 3 times, if the person continues, they're then allowed to proceed with conversion. And depending on which denomination someone converts into, their different rules. But like in the conservative movement, there's like a 6-month course that people will take to like learn about Judaism, and then they will, do the next few steps, which involve, for a man having a Brit Milah, picking a Hebrew name. For women, it's, there is no Brit Milah, but you're still picking a Hebrew name. Then both, anyone of any gender would then go through a mikvah, which is a ritual bath, and they would dunk, and then they would be, Jewish. And someone who converts to Judaism is treated the same as anyone who is born Jewish. So that was probably a little bit more detail than listeners cared about. But anyway, if you have questions, let me know. The reference to Temple Emmanuel, I think we might have talked about this before, but I can't quite recall. The name Temple Emmanuel is a popular name for synagogues or Temple Emmanuels all across the country. But in New York City specifically, there is a Reformed temple named Temple Emmanuel that was established in 1845. That's according to their webpage, emmanuelnyc.org. There's a reference to a Hasidic neighborhood. The Hasidim are I call them super ultra Orthodox Jews, but they're just ultra Orthodox Jews. They're noted for their social seclusion and their religious conservatism, meaning they like to live together, and they really don't get, they're separate. They try to be separate from the secular world. And they're very conservative in how they practice Judaism. And then finally, Frida makes the comment about holy days, I'm in, I'm out. And I looked into this. So according to our friends at reformedjudaism.org, they say, and I quote, visiting the graves of loved ones prior to the high holidays helps connect us to the holidays' themes of renewal, repentance, reflection, and growth through memories of our loved ones. Visiting these graves can add poignancy and perspective to the high holidays. So that's what they're referencing. Did I miss anything?
Whenever Fran was gushing about this shrimp scampi, I'm like, that's not kosher.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But no, thank you for reminding me. That's actually why I noted it before. She comments about the shrimp scampi that's to die for, made with scrod, that's to die for. Scrod is, I believe, a kosher fish.
Okay.
So scrod, actually, I'm going to, wow, okay, so according to approvedeats.com, scrod is typically a fillet of some fish, some type of white fish that is sold as food, particularly among the New England coast and Atlantic Canada. It does not actually refer to a specific type of fish, but it is most commonly young Atlantic cod or haddock, both of which are kosher fishes. So yes, my understanding was scrod is kosher, even if it might not refer to a specific type of fish. But for fish to be kosher, fins and scales. All right.
And then
done.
I think that's all I had for that.
Awesome. Do you want
nostalgia? You go first.
Old cars.
Yeah, specifically an old limo.
Correct. I think we also see an old taxi.
Well, Maxwell going out to find the camera.
That's what I had on my list. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now Brighton going out rollerblading. I feel like that was very 90s. I think there's been a recent resurgence on like social media, maybe, of people skating, but with the roller skates, not the roller blades. But yeah, I was just like, oh yeah, the roller blade seems very 90s to me.
I thought it also looked 90s, but then I thought, well, maybe I was just thinking that it looked very childish and not necessarily 90s. But I'm glad you've confirmed my thoughts.
Again, Tanta Frida's is pretty dated even for then.
Yeah, a little bit. I didn't have anything else other than Maggie's blue dress that we've already talked about.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think that's probably that pretty much covers it.
Cool.
So, future fun?
Um, so we later learn that Fran lost her Virgin airline ticket on a kibbutz in Israel. Um, and when that comes up, she does not refer to it as a Virgin airline ticket. She refers to it as her hat. She lost her hat. Um, so Brighton does get a big bar mitzvah like to do for his confirmation. Later in the series, the family goes on a cruise in the episode Ship of Fran's. Fran and Val were going to go on a cruise ship because Fran's psychic told her that she was going to dance with the man of her dreams on water. And so obviously the answer is go on a cruise. And Maxwell was concerned that Fran was going to meet someone. And so he took the whole family, including Grandma Yetta and Sylvia and Cece, I should mention, and Niles, of course.
Everybody.
Pretty much everybody. Although, oh, and I guess Morty is also there, even though, again, we don't see him. And Fran does dance with someone on water. But anyway, we later meet Grandma Fine, whose name is Nettie. So Fran's grandmas are Yetta and Nettie. So we meet Morty's mother, Morty and Frida's mother. So I'm not quite sure why Sylvia and Frida were fighting over Grandma Fine's pearls. I'm not quite sure where that comes from. There's that. And then finally, Aunt Frida comes back 3 more times, including in episodes where she hires Niles to be a houseboy. She moves in briefly with the Sheffields because she loses her apartment, and Fran almost steals her soon-to-be fiance, unintentionally, mind you. And then she also appears on the episode where she purchased Sylvia and Morty's building and threw them out, forcing Sylvia and Morty to move in with Fran and her family.
So there's still that contentious relationship.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it gets a little better, and I don't think Sylvia tries to throw herself out any more windows. But yeah, there's still a bit of tension there, if you will. So yeah, that's all the future fun I have for you. Okay. I think it's time to rate the episode.
Yes. And I believe it's my turn.
I love it when it's your turn.
So, a bit conflicted just because there are things I like, things I'm not so fond of. So, for instance, like the whole, like, I'm sure you know what I'm going to say.
I do, but go ahead. Go ahead.
Again, the constant talk about weight and food and how, like, I know what they're trying to go for, but like treating them kind of like animals with cake and stuff like that wasn't necessarily, my favorite thing. But again, I thought it was hilarious. The ending scene where Fran's just like wiggling to get Maxwell messed up. So it's a bit mixed, I would say. So 4.25.
Okay.
Pulled that out of the air.
That's fine. You reserve the right to change it and adjust at the end of the season. So
yes. So what about you?
So I'm conflicted, but for a different reason. Like, yeah, it's not great that Sylvia and Frida are treated like dogs for over chocolate cake. I agree with you. That's not great. Although I will say that scene did really make me want chocolate cake. The whipped cream and the chocolate sauce I don't need. I just like the chocolate cake. But like, so this is an episode that like I like. I'm not quite sure I love it though. Like, it is one that I know. Like, if you said to me, "Oh, I'm gonna go watch a Fine Family Feud," I'd be like, "Great," and I know exactly what you're talking about. But it's not one that I don't think I go out of my way to watch it. I don't hate it. But I like it. I don't love it. I'm like thinking about other episodes that we've already seen and other episodes that we're going to see in the not so distant future.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it doesn't measure up compared to like the pen pal, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Although to be fair, what does?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But I'm also thinking about like the next like other episodes. I'm gonna give it a 4.75.
Okay.
Because it's good. I like it. I enjoy it. It's
not quite a 5.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's right. So I think that's what I'm gonna go with.
Okay.
Is there anything else we need to talk about?
I don't believe so. I think
There's
it's funny that like everybody ends up at the party. Including Niles and Cece, who were apparently close enough to each other to thoroughly mess each other up.
Well, that's something that I guess this is sort of future fun. Like Cece and Niles just keep finding themselves closer than comfort,
Mm-hmm.
like, and they don't expect it. So there's that. Yeah, we do have one thing we should mention, that we have been doing this for over a year, so we deserve a pat on the back.
Yay!
For we should have mentioned this last week, but this is episode number 53. Or sorry, this is episode of the Nanny, episode 54. 52. Wow, I'm doing really good with my numbers. Let me start this sentence again.
Okay.
This is episode of the Nanny number 52, and we've already done recaps of seasons 1 and 2. So if you add 2 plus 52, you get 54. So for us, this is episode 54 of our show. Mm-hmm. And we have done it every week for over a year. And I think we've been having a blast doing it. We really appreciate all of our wonderful listeners who have been taking this journey with us and, mm-hmm. reach out to us and, we'll go into our sign off shortly, but, tweet us, email us, share our show with your friends,
Yeah. Thanks for being with us for over a year.
Yeah, we appreciate it because we know we're quirky and, we appreciate you hanging out with us every week.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So. And our totally professional podcast.
Clearly we're doing a super job. But anyway, truly we appreciate everyone who's, encouraged us and been on this journey with us, and those who join us even midway through. This is a labor of love for us, or at least for me. I hope I'm speaking for you as well, Bernadette. Mm-hmm. So thank you for sticking with us, and we got like a lot more to go. We got 2.5 more seasons, so a little more than that. But yeah, so okay,
3.5.
Yes, 3.5. No, 2.5. It's only 6. There's 6 seasons.
Yes,
we're in season 3.
Yes, so we have another more than half of a season to get to 4. Then all of 4, all of 5, all of 6.
I'm so confused. You're right.
Math.
It's our friend. We promise. Okay, we should probably end here before we say anything else goofy. All right. Well, that's all we have for you today. We hope you had a fine time with us as we revisited The Nanny. Join us next week when we'll be discussing episode 53, Val's Apartment.
If you'd like to reach us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at Nanny Revisited. You can also send us email at afinetimenannyrevisited@gmail.com. Have a great week.